probably need to approve the agenda. Yeah, B, C, and that's gonna go down to our new business, or we do it before we do the patron comment. We just do patron comments and then go back to the seven new business. Might as well, because the patrons will get ridiculous if they wait too long. We have a form. Four of us to get going.
And again, I want to express our just sincere appreciation for your patience as we worked through some very detailed and complex information that is very important and relevant. So thank you for that. I'd like to welcome you to the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is August 4th, and we are meeting at the district offices located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. And the first item is to approve the agenda for August 4th. So I will entertain a motion for that with some amendments to the agenda.
Okay, I move to approve the agenda for today with the following changes. We will be moving study session B, C, and D to item 6, and they will still be items B, C, and D, but under new business now.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you. And any discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Any opposed? No. All right, that motion passes. Thank you. We will now be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Dr. McKay Robinson, Director of Elementary Schools.
Will the audience please rise? Please state the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so very much. Please be seated.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Okay, we've now come to the patron comment portion of our board meeting. And the board appreciates hearing from our patrons and employees of the district. And this evening, we have 6 people signed up to address the board. And so I would ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And the board does not engage in dialogue, especially on personnel issues of a district employee's character, professional competence, or mental or physical health. If a member of the public wants to comment on personnel issues, the board would request that those comments be submitted to the board in writing. However, if the member of the public determines to verbally comment on personnel issues, His or her comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory, or slanderous comments about an individual. And we have, I just want to comment how much I appreciate, and I think I can speak for the board as well. We appreciate the level of public engagement that we have here in this district. And so, like I said, if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes or under, I will give you a little warning signal when you're approaching the time so that you can wrap it up then. And I will call the names. We do have a few patrons that want to speak to the board by phone. So I will call names 3 in a row. And then, so you'll know when you're on deck or next, can't think of my baseball analogy on that one. There's in the hole. Yeah. So anyway, we'll begin with Maddie Malini, and then we'll go to a telephone call so that we can wipe off the microphone and so then Julie Moreno, and then Erica Bradshaw.
Good evening. My name is Maddie Molini, and I am a teacher in Canyon School District. I'm a constituent, but most importantly, I am a parent of a student in Canyon School District. As a single mom and as someone that has full custody of my children, saying that students and parents have choice when it comes to their plans for school in the fall is simply not true for the majority of us. Myself, as well as those in situations similar to myself, do not have the option to homeschool or do online. And I think that's reflective in the percentages we're seeing in in-person instruction. I appeal to you to give us options for in-person instruction. Modified schedules, hybrid schedules, shortened class days, early outs, smaller class sizes. Give us options because we don't have any right now. My situation and those in my situation should not mean that my student does not have access to state recommended social distancing guidelines and minimum class size recommendations, just because he is in a brick and mortar school building. We deserve choices too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the telephone, Julie Moreno.
Hi, I hope you can hear me okay. Thank you, board, for taking my phone call this evening. My name is Julie Moreno, and I am a new teacher to Canyons. I'm not a new teacher, but I am a new teacher to Canyons this year. I just hope that the board is seriously considering the August 24th start date or later, as we received information from our administrators today regarding not having our class rosters until potentially August 14th. With a school start date of August 17th, that does not give teachers time to prepare for our students, to prepare our classrooms for our students. I also have been taking the new teacher orientation for Canyons this week. Yesterday, we were physically distanced appropriately. Today, there was a shortage, my understanding, of trained staffing. So they crunched us together in the media center, and there were now no longer 2 people sharing space, there were 4. If that's happening with adults, and I'm a high-risk individual with severe asthma, if that's happening with adults, what's going to happen when students come to the school? We still don't have all of them registered. We still don't have all of the equipment set up. We don't even have the things ready to go. One thought that I had, though, as far as counselors go, is use our counselors to help our students with coping strategies and teaching them health and wellness and how to help themselves use that TA time to use those counselors. So if we do have counselors at risk, they could do virtual webinars or things like that as an option. I appreciate so much you taking the time. I know there's going to be a long board meeting tonight, so more power to you. There are no perfect decisions, but I think there are better ones. I think there's a possibilities of virtual classrooms that can be set up in schools and the gyms to provide equity and education, to not force parents to make the decision either or. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Erica Bradshaw, and then Natalie Hood.
There I go. Hi, I'm Erica Bradshaw, president of Canyons Education Association. I know you haven't heard from me before. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I did want to tell BJ, you know, your forest fire thing, Forest Service departments have been severely defunded, so it really is just you. You're the only one who can prevent forest fires. Anyway, so I think you can see that teachers at this point still don't feel safe. And we're just asking you to see what more can be done. I know there's been talk about the delay. That's something we wholeheartedly support. I love Mont's idea of after Labor Day, but if we have to, limit it to just 1 or 2 weeks, that would still be great. It would give us an opportunity to look at those numbers that are decreasing, hopefully still get them down to a more acceptable level where our risk of infection is not so high. We've heard that there's a lot of plans for the personal protective equipment and for safety measures in the school, but obviously not all of those things are going to be in place if we start on the 17th. So it would be nice if we had a little more time to get that ready. And I know some of our schools are scrambling to get some of their construction dust or whatever out of the way so that they have facilities ready. Also, we've been asked to do a lot of this blended learning with our tech summit, and it would be really nice if teachers had more than just 4 hours on day 2 to try to get that blended learning. We know that it can be very time consuming. And teachers also really want to know the numbers. We support the recommendations from the COVID manual that the state put out that says if you have 3 individuals per class or 15 to a school, that would either mean you have a quarantine of an entire class or a school. We kind of want to know what are those thresholds, at what point will we end up going online. And then one other thing is I was listening to the conversation happening today, and we saw the numbers of students who are choosing online versus in person, especially in what we would consider more our schools that are more highly impacted and have more students at risk. I think it's very interesting to note that we have a much higher percentage of students who are choosing online at those institutions. And one of the reasons why in person 5 days a week was really pushed was for the equity issues, that we have those at-risk students in person where they can get more instruction. So I'm wondering if maybe the board wants to have a discussion around that and think that if these high-risk students are now being online, are you really providing them as an equitable solution as if you were to look at something like a hybrid or early out days or fewer days a week or something like that? Just something that I thought was really interesting as the data came out. Thank you very much. Thank Dr. Robbins. He's been great to work with.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. On the telephone, Natalie Hood, and then Don Gonzalez.
All right. Hello, and thank you for letting me provide my comments tonight. I am a parent to 3 students at the elementary level, and I have already registered my children for in-person learning. I would like to address my concerns regarding the modified quarantine guidelines released by the state last week. My biggest question is, would you be comfortable with your child sitting next to someone in class who has been directly exposed to a positive COVID case? I do understand mitigation efforts are part of the reopening plan and will help mitigate some risk if someone is positive for COVID. However, children do not have the same maturity level as adults and don't understand the importance of staying away from others because they have been exposed to a positive case. Through my conversations with the local health department, state health department, and school district, I have been told schools fall under the essential category, which is the reason for the modified quarantine guideline to apply in this situation. I would like to know why we're expecting children to properly follow a protocol developed for adults. I do believe returning to in-person instruction is very important, and all of the work being done by the district, board, teachers, administrators, and school staff to be able to return safely is greatly, greatly appreciated. However, if we want a chance at keeping our schools open and operating and keeping our students, teachers, and school staff as healthy as possible, the policies and procedures implemented need to have their safety at the forefront of the plan. The current state guidelines allowing a modified quarantine in schools not only send conflicting and contradictory messages to parents and the community, they also put everyone in schools and their families at an unnecessary risk for contracting and spreading this virus. I am asking you to please implement a different quarantine policy for Canyon schools, one that requires a full quarantine without the option to attend school if you are directly exposed to a positive COVID case. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, Dawn Gonzalez and then Deborah Delascave.
There we go. Okay, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to express my thoughts and concerns about the reopening of schools during our current pandemic. And thank you for listening. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of the classroom teachers and concerned caretakers of students who feel that the school environment is not yet safe enough to return to school on August 17th. As teachers, we want nothing more than to go back to school and get back to our normal routines. However, we are returning to an unsafe working environment. The district's plan to begin the school year in person, full-time, with full class loads is considered high risk according to the CDC prevention guiding principles. Their definition of high risk is full or regular classroom students not spaced apart and mixed between classes or activities. Because students, teachers, and staff are being placed in a high-risk environment, it only makes sense to put in as many safety precautions available in place well before the we return in person. At this point in time, these precautions are not in place in schools, nor will they be by the 17th. We've not been assured of that. District documents admit that even automatic sanitizer dispensers won't be installed in classrooms until October. In addition, the MERV 8 filters, which I've done some research on air filters, that the district currently uses or wants to use are definitely not enough to stop the spread of pollutants, germs, and viruses that we're exposed to. They only block dust, dust mites, pollen, and mold. There are better air filters that exist and that can and should be installed to help mitigate the risk. Mitigate the risk of spreading the virus. I highly recommend the board research information about air filters and the amount and kind of particles that those various filters really block. We would like to also know what will be done for the majority of schools that are not going to get the upgraded MERV 13 filters. Will we get portable air filters, air purifiers, or what? Or is it too bad, so sad? Teachers are very concerned about the modified quarantine introduced last week. The state superintendent, Sydney Dixon, stated in an email recently that it is important to note that the two variables in this equation are masks and distancing. In schools where class sizes aren't reduced to enhance distancing, we will likely see more quarantines. That's end quote. So we've been informed that the language of this modified quarantine is being revised, and hope that it's in support of a much safer teaching and learning environment. And based on scientific data, if these things aren't in place by the 17th, and if that's not logistically possible to get those things in place, we ask that school be postponed for 1 to 2 weeks so that those protective measures can be put in place. Thanks.
Thank you. Deborah.
Good evening. Thank you all for letting me speak to you tonight. I watched your last board meeting all the way till 11:05 with you, and I saw how hard it was for you to make decisions and how you wanted to ask questions about pushing back our schedule or going to a modified schedule. But you were told, remember what we've been assigned to do. Well, now that the state board has removed that requirement, modified schedule does come back into play. Mr. Wrigley, that completely answers your questions about cohorts. If we do an AB schedule like all of our administrators were working on, we can track infections better. We can actually teach more effectively. Mr. Weller brought up anxiety. Sure, teachers are anxious, students are anxious, but I want you to look at this little box that I'm creating right here. Imagine trying to build a relationship with a minimum of 30 of this face in your classroom. You're not going to learn their names right away. All you see is this. If that was cut in half to 15, you can build the relationship, thus lowering the anxiety, raising the trust, and keeping us in contact with our students and allowing us to teach effectively. Best practices say, you've got to build the relationship first. Give us a chance to do that. And I would like to thank the superintendent for looking to push back our date. But I agree with Mr. Millerberg. If we could push it back 1 more week, then maybe Mr. Weller could help get some anxiety PDs going in our meetings so that we can learn how to help our kids with their anxiety as well. Thank you very much. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes.
Thank you. All right. Have I missed anyone else that signed up to speak? Okay, that concludes our patron comments. And thank you again for being here and for addressing the board. The next item is a consent agenda. So I will call for a motion for the consent agenda. And in making that motion, will you please read the individual items contained on that consent?
Guess I'll make that motion. Take the mask off. I make the motion to approve the following consent agendas. Item A, approval of minutes from July 14, 2020. B, approval of hire and termination reports. C, approval of purchasing bids. D, approval of purchasing bids for property located at 662 East, 7800 South on Sandy. E, approval of purchasing of property located at 660 East, 7800 South Sandy, 2 different properties. B, approval of special warranty deed and right of way donation with Cottonwood Heights City for the roundabout on Bingle Boulevard. And G, approval of transfer 1 portable classroom to El Terra Elementary.
Thank you. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next item, new business, adjustment to the 2020-2021 school year calendar. This is possible action. Superintendent Robbins.
Unless there's further questions, you have the information and the recommendation. So I'll leave it to you to discuss or ask questions.
Okay, Mrs. Oakes.
Sorry, no, you're fine. So I know that a lot of questions have been brought up with regard to hybrid schedules. And this is something I've talked at length with different members of the administration in order to clarify and better understand this about where things went away from that. And I feel like it's important because it's been brought up so much by teachers and members of the public to have a little clarification about what the reasoning behind why we haven't pursued that. One of the things I've heard is part of the input came from CEA in part in negotiations and discussions about the difficulty that elementary teachers in particular would have in teaching a split schedule, that they would not only be responsible for teaching every day in person, but would also be responsible for the online content. Is that correct?
Yeah. So to get to that, let's back up to the spring and early, I'm thinking early May, when we were in color phases, right? Red, orange, yellow, and green. So at the time, there was really no requirement to even have the discussion. But in Canyons, that had already started. And I don't want to speak for the team, but there was a task force created, I believe, in March, April, that had administrators, principals, and teachers on it. And so they started to look at those, what the possibilities would be for reopening school. And then as we got into May, if I remember right, Salt Lake County moved from orange, which we were in, which was mostly remote with small guided groups could come into the building, to yellow. And in yellow, the language has social distancing. And so the proposals that were brought forward, I believe there were 4 of them, red, orange, yellow, and green. I think it was the May 21st meeting. In that meeting, if I recall, Dr. Dowdle's words were, we would not recommend any of these in red, orange, and yellow because we believe best practice is to be in-person instruction, right? And I think most people, even all teachers, all educators would agree if it weren't if it wasn't the situation it is, we would return to in-person instruction, but COVID occurred and everything happened. So based on that, that was the proposal. About that same time, then within about a week, the governor moved schools away from the color phases into the state template. And at that point, that's where, because we hadn't really proposed it as a recommendation, but these are just proposals in the plan to go forward. If I recall, and I don't want to speak for the team, the messaging that our team received when we were proposing the split schedule on the 21st, there was opposition to that. Teachers and administrators both voiced opposition for the very reasons that you brought up. Now, maybe at the time I don't know that any of us had our heads around community spread and these issues. I think that's a very fair thing to look at. But the realities are, if we are to move into a split schedule, that teachers that teach in person would then have their students 2 days a week. What our plan was, or proposal was, 2 days a week, 2 days in person, and then each day they would rotate AB, and the rest of the class is online. So they would be responsible to ensure online instruction as well as in-person instruction, which I don't know that that's essentially doubling the workload, but that's a heavy lift. So that's how that originated. I'm just speaking for me. About that same time as I come on board and started to really evaluate our own data and our demographics of our district, for me to look at the data that was supported by a self-reported survey by our students and parents, that 10% of those students don't have internet access, that makes that extraordinarily challenging. Now, is that our responsibility? Yes, I've openly said, I think it's important that as a state and as a country, the issue with digital divide is real. It's not just an issue in canyons, but it's very difficult to lean on that system when we know that many of our students would be excluded. In the spring, all of us did the best we could. We used hotspots. We tried to deliver the best that we can, but those are, when you look at that heat map and that stark reality, not just in certain communities, but that was spread pretty much across the entire district. So for me, that's a major hurdle to overcome. I think we will get over that hurdle, but right now that's still a challenge. So from that point, that's where the recommendation for 5 days grew out of. The guidance at the time, if I remember right, and it's gone different directions. I think at the state level, USBE as well as the governor, about Memorial Day. I recall that the guidance, and I think I asked this in last board meeting. I don't recall if it was a directive or if it was exactly how that language came, but I felt like, and maybe others can, I think Nancy actually spoke to this, guidance from the governor's office and USBE at the time felt perceived as open school in person. The very first piece of language in the state's template says to keep parent hardships in mind at the front of every decision. And so, that's one element that we haven't really talked about, but the economic impact and the role that we play as LEAs and school districts across our state, that is very real. And that's not, I'm not indicting that. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but even in our meeting with mayors and council and Senator Reeby mentioned that in that meeting, that the deficit that we're facing as a state, our projected revenues are not increasing as rapid as we thought. So not saying that that's a driver, but that's another element that has not, had a lot of press, but that's also real. And not to mention, I think, at the time, for me anyway, and we've discussed this before, not just the fact that 3,100 and something students had no internet connectivity, but we have 11,000 students that are economically disadvantaged and vulnerable. And as Erica mentioned, I'm not sure why that population may or may not be enrolling in the patterns that they're in, but collectively, overall, I think, that's a population that we need to continue to try to serve better across all LEAs. And I think having access to mental health supports and wellness and food is a really big deal. I've referred often to the Brown University study, and they looked at the traumatic and sudden stop and impact of Hurricane Katrina and studying 5 million students post Hurricane Katrina for over 10 years and what that impact had. And that's where I'm just as frightened by that as I am the potential of COVID spreading. So, that's the culmination of kind of what led us to the recommendation. And so other questions.
Other comments?
Yeah, just,
Oh,
Well, just with respect to the filters, I know there's been a lot also written in about filters, quality of filters, what's working, what isn't. And maybe Leon, you can be one to speak to this, but I'm interested as a board member, better understanding the filters that we're using and how effective they are with regard to what we're talking about.
So if Everett's not here, so Everett, Leon might be able to speak to this. Everett's probably our best expert. I've heard him talk about our filters being updated from MERV 6 to 8. And I think from what I understand, MERV 8 is the standard, but as mentioned, it's not MERV 13. So if we can update, I've talked to Leon about that. If we can update to 13, I think that's at least through the semester, through maybe December, the best that we can. I don't know in our older buildings that are that aged, like what options that may take more engineering from people that have way more expertise than I do that can come in and, you know, really look at that. But I know that's a real positive mitigating factor. So you want to add anything that to Leon or?
Yeah, Amanda, that's a really good question. Concern that we've been looking at. We are going to try to do MERV 13s the best we can. That being said, now MERV 13s will capture the virus, we've been told. I don't know if that's been scientifically proven. With that being said, not all our buildings can accept a MERV 13 filter with the age and whatnot. We have 3 buildings, Union, Peruvian Park, and Edgemont, that are of course going to be rebuilt, that don't have central air. They use swamp coolers. Swamp coolers actually increase the humidity, which helps eliminate the virus somewhat too. So in a way, those older buildings benefit us out. Those 3 older buildings benefit us that way. But our intention is to go MERV 13s as best we can. You know, the supply, the ability to change those out. You have to change. They're a thinner filter, right? If you look at your home filters in your furnace, it's quite a bit thinner. So you have to monitor those very closely because they will get gaps and holes in them that way. So our intention is to do that. It's about 150,000 probably for 6 months to do that. So it's not a cheap price tag to go this route, but yeah, we are going to try to go as many as we can. We also, I know one of the patrons mentioned about the portable ones. We are going to look at that in some areas too. But again, this was a Friday night conversation we had, and we're still trying to get the best solutions out there. Right now, all our buildings are the standard MERV 8s. They are the standard. From what I've read, they are the ones that are least recommended, but they're not, they're not going to solve all the problems there. So we're trying to enhance it. I know a couple districts are staying with the MERV 8s. A couple are trying to enhance up to the MERV 13s. So.
Thank you. And I know, I just want to recognize the fact that as an administration, all of you are drinking through a massive fire hose. I mean, yesterday I sat and I read emails for 8 hours. And for every email that I read, another 3 would come in. It was like never ending. And that's just me as a board member. I can't even imagine what you guys are dealing with. And so I just want to publicly thank you for everything that you guys are doing and thinking on your feet. I recognize this is a gargantuan task.
It changes all the time. So.
Yeah, constantly. So I have one more question with regard to hand sanitizer. I've heard bits and pieces about when the sanitizer will arrive, when it will be ready. I know I have publicly spoken before that I'm fine with changing the start date of school, and I appreciate the superintendent offering an additional week for schools to prepare. In light of our supplies and making sure that we have hand sanitizer available, can you give us a little idea on that?
Sure. Tomorrow, they started pulling this today in our warehouse across the street. They started pulling big bins where they have the hand sanitizer, the mask, the bottles, the towels, the wipes. These will start being delivered in these big tubs to schools tomorrow. And they should be there all by Friday. So they will be in classrooms. Our commitment was to start on the 17th, that they would be there when teachers arrive. Hand sanitizer is fairly, it ebbs and flows, supply and demand. We purchased this $26,000 of wipes back in late May, because we were petrified that there was a run on wipes, and we were hearing they were 90 days out and we weren't going to get them. So we purchased them then. The hand sanitizer is pretty easily to procure. Costco's reached out to us that they have gallon jugs. Our other suppliers reached out to us, they have gallon jugs. I'm confident, very confident, in that we can always replenish and restock the hand sanitizer. That was not a big, and when I say the hand sanitizer, those that are not being on the recall list, those 130 that are out there. So the hand sanitizer really does not, as an administration, does not concern us. I think the biggest one would probably be the shields. I think the biggest one would also be the quality of face masks, not the masks, we have the coverings, but the shields, that's a concern. As we heard Dr. Webb talk about those. So those seem to be the two hardest to get items right now, is plexiglass and shields.
Leon,
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to clarify on that question about the hand sanitizer. I believe you mentioned that the wall-mounted dispensers were a little bit back ordered, but there would be hand sanitizer available.
Yeah, we have stock. We have the 10,000 bags that go in those back there. We have those right now. That is actually what we're putting in these bottles that go out. So we have the 10,000 bags in stock. Costco's reached out, and like I said, we got 1,000 1-gallon jugs now, another 1,000 coming in this week or next week. Costco's reached out, they have jugs as well. We've also, as we met with the principals the last couple days in our critical policy, we have emphasized to them that if they need material, plan ahead and make that trip down to Costco or to Sam's Club, to Walmart, and purchase this stuff. They all have purchasing cards to procure this and get that. I think we're, I think they all know their responsibility and how important this is, and so do we. So we will make sure that's stocked and out to the schools.
Thank you.
I had a
Irene,
question.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yeah. So speaking of shields and face masks, it was my understanding that if you wear the shield that comes down, then your air goes down the shield. And because we're dealing with younger children, then our air is actually going down to where they are, except we're supposed to be keeping proximity, right? We're supposed to be keeping the distance. So then it would be, it'd have to go down and then go over. And that if you wore the shield down, you'd need to wear your mask anyway to keep to help mitigate where that air is going. I bought a shield that actually lays on my neck and comes up, but I noticed that as I try to talk in that shield, people can't hear me. It's kind of muffled, and it comes back and it echoes in my ears pretty loud. The louder I talk, the more echo I get. But here's my question. Sorry about all that dialogue. It's really late at night. I know we bought them for the teachers, but if the teachers choose not to want to use them, they want to choose to just use the masks, because that's what I have now decided, that I'm just going to use my mask. It seems to mitigate what I want to and be able to talk and deal with the children in the best way. Can we use those shields for other people that maybe we didn't prepare them for? Because I don't know, do we buy them for the ESPs, the secretaries, the paraprofessionals? Did we buy the masks for them also?
Yes, we got 4,000. So our goal was to give every certified employee one, every teacher one,
Okay.
whether they wanted it or not. Then we got another 2,000, and we have heard from our Jordan Valley teachers. They've actually asked for 2, so we've given them 2 each, because they're concerned about not, if the mask covers their facial expressions. So they're concerned about that. And also some of our special education teachers, the same factor. We also have given a shield to every bus driver. And we still have plenty for other, whether it be other teaching assistants or paraprofessionals or substitutes too. So, and we can, we'll look at getting more of those in. We're just trying to figure out the demand on those. So that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
We do know the ones, found out they do need to go down. So that is something that we'll try to focus on moving forward. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Millerberg has a question.
I want you to know I'm not nearly as worked up this time as I was a couple of weeks ago. Last week, and I can't remember who said it, and probably somebody in here heard the same thing, and they would be able to give you, attribute it to the right person. But they said, let me be clear. Returning to the classroom is not a choice between a good choice and a bad choice. It's a choice between a bad choice and another bad choice, as far as the spread of COVID is concerned. I think I mentioned it to both of you sometime during last week or this week, that in many ways I feel like we're creating giant petri dishes with our schools. The virus will be there. We will have some issues. And I just hope the culture doesn't grow COVID like I'm afraid it will. I mentioned a few meetings ago that we now have the opportunity to recreate education. And I feel like it's happening. Last time I was pretty worked up. I don't know if anybody noticed or not, but I voted against the plan to reopen. You hadn't noticed? Just in case. I've got three major things that I'm concerned about. First and foremost, I'm concerned about the safety of our students. Sorry, teachers, you get second place. Second place, I'm concerned about the health and safety of our teachers. Third, I'm concerned about the quality of education that our students receive. I think it's great that we've got online choices, we've got face-to-face choices, we've got hybrid choices, we've got a whole bunch of choices. And I'm not blaming anybody, but I am afraid that the quality of education we saw from the middle of March through the end of the school year was not the same quality we had with face-to-face instruction. Part of that is that it was face-to-face or it was online. Part of that was we had people scrambling and doing their absolute best they possibly could to get something put in place and continue with some education model. And I think that our educators are to be commended for what they did. Those are my three priorities. And I say, how do we get there? We've got masks, we've got social distancing, which is as we discussed, that is an and test, not an or test. It's not mask or social distancing. It's mask and social distancing. Hopefully we put a dagger in the heart of modified quarantine tonight and the results come back to where I can rest a whole bunch easier. And I've heard other people make comments. Waiting for the decline in the rolling average. We've got high-risk individuals. And, not only do we have teachers that are high-risk individuals, but we've got a lot of people that have older people living in their homes who are high-risk individuals. And so you can take a low-risk individual and they can take it home and still create problems. One of the biggest concerns I have is the students that need face-to-face education the most, those that are the most vulnerable, those that equity will impact the most, are the ones that we need to get back into the classroom because they don't have some of the things happening at home that other kids have. They may not have the ability to have a stay-at-home parent. They may not have high-speed internet. And so those kids need to go back. More on point with the delayed start. I really, really appreciate the offer to go for a week, but I feel very, very strongly that if we are going to have success and we are going to have the backing of our education professionals in the classroom, and make no mistake, I've said it before, the magic happens in the classroom. I believe that if we pushed it back to the 24th, we would first of all give them a chance to get their classrooms ready. We would give us a chance to get some of the schools brought into shape better. We would have more time to get things distributed out. And I think it also shows shows solidarity with the teachers to say, yeah, we're listening. We understand what you're saying. Tonight, we talked about the substitute pool, athletics, volunteers, what a kid is and when they become young adults, social, emotional, mental health, the economy, parents that have to go to work and they need their kids to go to school so they can go to work, so they can pay their bills and so life can go on. I want to express my appreciation that since our last board meeting, I feel like, not that I was the lone man out, but I feel like district administration has listened, and pretty much every concern I had at our last meeting has in one way or another been addressed. And so I appreciate that you've listened and you've done what you have. I also want to express appreciation to the CEA for their support and for not just, well, what do I want to say? I appreciate having him out there with saying, welcome to board meeting tonight, we love you. And so now with all that that I've just kind of put out there, tell me if the wheels fall off, if the start of school gets pushed back 2 weeks instead of 1.
I'll support and do what you want. That's a board discussion. I think either works. It has, I think the pluses and minuses have been well debated, and I think it will be great either way. So
Rick, I listened to you talk about everything that has to happen before school can start. My head is swimming from listening to that. I listened to the people that made comments tonight. My head's swimming from what the teacher said they need to have happen. And I don't know. I would like to have the teachers be able to score it in a W column. Not that it's win or lose, but it's something to say we support where the magic happens.
Yeah, I totally agree. The thought of moving to a delayed start is largely credited to CEA and our teachers. I mean, and I appreciate, their kind words. We've met weekly for the whole month, and it's been amazing, and just the love and respect I have for them and the other teachers that have come to the meetings that may or may not be CEA members have been great too, and given me excellent feedback and perspective. So it's good.
I am just, like I said, my first concern is the safety of the kids. And I believe that if our buildings are better prepared when the kids come back, we'll be able to accomplish that better than we would if we rushed it. So, like I said, maybe it's more of a comment than a question, but that's kind of how I feel. And I just wanted to find out if I had stinking thinking.
No, you point well
Okay.
taken.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, Mrs. Arnold and then Mr. Wrigley.
Okay, so I'm great with pushing it back just to the 24th. I think it gives everybody an extra whole week. I know that you guys have already been working all summer long to create the Canvas lessons. I know you need a little more time to make the teacher assignments, but the lessons are pretty well there and they just need to be, I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I understand. The lessons are already there. The teachers just need to pull them all together and they just need to be assigned and then they're pretty well ready to go. And we have all the supplies and materials. This gives everybody a whole nother 5 days. So actually they have 10 days to be able to get their rooms together. There's probably a professional development day in there, or have we done those already? So there's probably a professional development day in there, right? So really it gives you 9 days to be in the room, to have discussions, to figure it out, to get some lessons prepared. And I'm very comfortable with doing the 4 days plus asking the state for one more. I feel like that is adequate and I don't think you would ask us for more unless you really needed more. And so I'm comfortable with starting on the 24th.
Just a couple things. First off, I would really like to see on those schools that are going online when we think they didn't, who's actually choosing online. My concern is some of the high schools is that the kids may be having to go online to work. And it may not be a choice to go, but they may be an opportunity, and they're having to work and maybe jeopardizing their education. So it'd be interesting to find out. I just wonder about that because as Mont said, especially a lot of our Title I schools, you'd hope the kids would be there because online at home is just not going to get the enrichment. We've worked so hard in Midville Middle and Midville Elementary to get these kids up. I don't want to start over again. And I'm afraid with 6 months off, we're going to probably end up starting over again. In response to the 24th or the 31st, you know, we spent quite a bit of time today talking about our numbers versus the state numbers. Our numbers are showing a trend down. And they're talking about if you have a trend down over 10 to 14 days, then this is a good trend. We give us enough time to take a look at the 14 days. I feel that 24 should be appropriate. As I said earlier, I'm really concerned about being gone for so long. But our other school, the only school that's getting till the until the 31st of the September is in orange. We're in yellow. I don't think we have a leg to stand on if our numbers are going down and we're in yellow. We're going to come back and say, well, we just want to go 2 weeks. I think you've got a strong argument to get it through 1 week, through that, through a appeal or a waiver. But I don't know how you'd make an argument for 2 weeks where you went back the second week and you know, you don't have any. So I'm for 24, going for the 24th. If something major comes up, we can go back and look at it again. But I just, by saying the 24th, again, tying back to teachers need time to teach those, especially the high school courses. They need time to teach those courses, and we're going to really shorten that down. They have so little time to teach and meet the requirements. And I assume this year we're going to be doing some end of the year testing. Maybe, maybe not. So, I mean, so there again, it really affects our end of the year testing. We keep on shorting things down and we're also going on it. So I support the 24th.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mrs. Schill.
I just support the 24th too. I mean, I think a week is good. I think that way teachers will have time to get in there, get ready, feel more comfortable, hopefully. I mean, and I also do think we need to be flexible though and continue to monitor the data. But right now, I think our district is ready. So I feel comfortable. It's 3 weeks from tonight. I think we have 3 weeks and we can finish getting ready.
Thank you. Other comments, Mrs. Oakes?
I'm kind of with Mont on, and some of the comments that have been made. Let's keep a pulse on what's going on. I just heard from one principal today that in the process of rebuilding their parking lot. I guess power lines were cut and a lot of other things have happened. I think I'm more concerned about just the logistical, physical aspects of getting these buildings ready. And if we need to take a closer look at that here in the near future, then let's do it. But I'm very, very grateful for the 24th at the very minimum. And I do consider what Dr. Webb said about a lot of this, we won't even know until we start what kind of challenges we're really facing. And the longer we put that off, that's kind of its own issue and own problem sometimes. So thank you.
Thank you. Is any other discussion? All right, this is listed as possible action. So a motion would be in order. Thank you.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve, tried to think of the word, the adjustment to the 2021 school year calendar. That would be the recommendation of starting school on August 24th. And ending on, using the calendar as is, ending on the same date.
Correct.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion or discussion to this motion?
I do have a thought.
Would you like to speak to it?
And I don't mean to be negative, okay? I do want it to be productive so that during those 2 weeks, we are really like being productive, not just sitting in our rooms, not just visiting in our rooms, that, you know, the Canvas lessons are being written and that the teachers are using that time effectively. And I'm pretty sure that will be monitored by the LEAs. But I can see an opportunity there where after the first week, people could be very comfortable doing not much of anything. And I'm just being truthful. So hopefully we can monitor that. Thanks.
I would just like to say that I support the motion. I agree. I feel like it is very important that our teachers have that extra time to prepare. And I also would like to recognize that this change kind of late will affect households and families, their calendars as well. So, and then also I feel like it's very reasonable that we can hopefully use those 4 PD days. We can apply for that waiver as well as, and then just ask for one day waived. And so I feel like it's a very reasonable thing, and it does address and solve some of the challenges that we've identified just recently. So I'm just want to speak in favor of that motion. So with that, if there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
I will oppose that. Not that I'm opposed to starting late, but I'm opposed to not starting later.
Okay, thank you. So that motion passes. And with that, obviously, like I said, we're kind of need to get that communicated out as quickly and broadly as we possibly can, so that families can make whatever adjustments and planning, as well as so that principals and teachers and educators in the school can also know what the expectation is on that. Okay, anything else on that one? No. All right, thank you. So I am going to just take a little bit of liberty here and adjust our order slightly and ask that we next address the new White City area's elementary name and mascot. And so Kirsten Stewart, I think you will lead us in that discussion. And I want to just thank Principal Julie for being here and being so patient. And thank you for all your work that you're doing on this pretty exciting project.
There we go. All right, thank you, President Tingy, members of the board. I come with a little bit of a lighter subject, which I hope at this late stage of the evening is welcome. You had mentioned we have some other folks who have been intimately involved in this process, which is the rebranding and renaming of a White City area school. One of them, of course, is Leon, who kickstarted everything with the presentation to the board, I believe last month. And of course, Elementary Schools Director McKay Robinson is here and can help answer some questions, as well as Julie Winfrey, who will serve as the principal of the new school when it opens. They've been involved throughout as we've gathered input, and then not here, of course, in person, but here in spirit. Jeff Olson has also been intimately involved. He's the Canyons District's graphic designer, who will be charged with bringing the final concept to life. So as you all know, as part of the priorities established with passage of the 2017 bond, the board has set a schedule, right, for the construction of a new White City area school to house Bellevue and Edgemont Elementary. And this really presents a once in a generation opportunity for these school communities, which is the naming of a new school. Over the past few months, we've been working with the Bellevue and Edgemont parents and teachers to identify possible names, mascots, and school colors, with the end goal being to brand the new school or create identity to really bring these two communities together. A quick word about kind of the timing and why we're undertaking this now. So the expected completion date of the school actually isn't until, is 2 years away, so the fall of 2022. But we've begun this branding process now to really provide some much needed aesthetic direction to the architects who are really already working on the design. The branding of a new school is really a rare opportunity to define what a school stands for, and to build a sense of school pride. And so really the true architects of the ideas that we're going to discuss tonight are the parents, Edgemont and Bellevue parents and faculty, and of course the students that they care for and represent. So we began this process in late May by inviting all PTA and SEC members to a couple of brainstorming sessions where we kind of tasked them with talking about the history of the two schools and their values, and then they drew up a preliminary list of ideas for names, mascots, and school colors. And then we created two smaller focus groups comprised of teachers and parents. You can see the individuals listed here. And they were really charged with working with their constituent groups to whittle that list to what we'll present to you tonight. All told, we held 4 meetings with stakeholders this summer. We also interviewed some community leaders. You see them listed here. Ellen Wallace, obviously a former Canyons Board of Education member. She has lived in that community for some time. I think she's had kids and grandkids attend both schools. And of course, Betty Shaw, who was here earlier tonight, I think she was interested in observing this, but former PTA Region 17 president, and also was I think a member or maybe even the president of the PTA at Edgemont at one point. And then of course, we also reached out to the White City Township for some information and a little bit about the history of the area. And I want to just thank all of those individuals for the time and energy that they invested in this. It was asking a lot, and their input was extremely valuable. So the two schools combined have more than 115 years of history combined, which actually makes this process quite a bit easier because, we have something to build upon. Because at the end of the day, a brand isn't a logo, it's not a slogan, it's really a culture and kind of a rallying point. And so when we ask these two school communities to talk about or describe kind of what makes their schools tick, you can see some of the words that they came up with. They look at both of their schools as inclusive, and the students that enroll there as kind, honest, resilient, curious, creative. And when we asked them, they made a couple of things clear throughout this process. And one was that they wanted, that they felt they had a lot of shared values, you know, as we kind of discussed these values, and that also they wanted something new, right? Something new to a unique identity that the students could be really proud of and rally behind. So you can see some of the names that first surfaced in some of the early brainstorming. Initially, there was some talk of combining the school names, right? Belmont or Edgeview. And I think a majority of the focus group members felt that they kind of wanted to avoid an appearance of maybe having preference for one or the other based on which name came first. And then also, I think, again, that they really wanted something new that they could rally behind. There was some talk about maybe giving Canyons kind of a commemorative nod now that we're at our 10th year and calling it the Canyons Elementary School, and some talk about maybe Alliance Elementary or Unity Elementary. But I think what resonated most with the families and the teachers was to kind of look at the area and sort of draw from that. So whether it was geographically or the history of the area. So Galena surfaced as one idea because that is the road. It's the oldest road actually in White City, and it's the road that connects the two schools. And then there was also the idea of, you know, Dimpledale is obviously a very large and prominent geographic feature in that area. We talked about the Dimpledale dinos or ducks. And then the Bear Park, Big Bear Park actually emerged as kind of an early favorite because Big Bear Park, I guess, is a real community center in that area. It is actually located between the two schools. So it is kind of a rallying point already physically and geographically. And the community really felt that that would be something that everyone would feel familiar with and would bring everyone together. And then finally, the kind of later in the process, the idea of glacier or glacial hills came up. And it kind of reflects the glacier cut canyons that you can see as you look east along the Wasatch Range. It's kind of one of there are some prominent peaks in that area also, like Lone Peak, but that's a name that's already graces quite a few schools. But what's also prominent is Little Conway Canyon and Bell Canyon, and both of those are cut with glaciers. They happen to be, I guess, some of the longest glaciers in the Wasatch that at one point, you know, went all the way through the range and actually terminated at the edge of what was once Lake Bonneville. So as far as mascots go, you can see some of the names that were generated. Some of them, because of, you know, alliteration, they sounded good. I mentioned the ducks, the dinos, or because, you know, they made logical sense. So Bear Park, you know, it's logical to have a bear associated with that as a mascot, or I guess a bee, right? Because honey-loving bears and bees, there's that association. With a nice pairing with Glacier Hills would be the Yeti, which is kind of unique, and the dinosaurs, which is, I have to say, one of the crowd favorites. So, and as to colors, both schools actually have blue as one of their colors. And so one of the thoughts was to have maybe two shades of blue. Edgemont happens to have a darker blue than Bellevue, a little bit of a lighter. So, and we thought that teal and yellow were kind of two accent colors that we could look at. So in the end, the focus group whittled it down to two names, Bear Park Elementary and Glacier Hills Elementary. And then they have the two mascots for each name because they pair well with them. The bears and bees for Bear Park, and the dinos or dinosaurs and the Yeti for Glacier Hills. We have blue and white obviously is one idea for the color combo, and then two shades of blue. And of course we could offer an accent color with that. We get closer further down in the design process. So I could entertain, I guess, some questions, or we could entertain some questions at this point. I would just say that I think that, you know, this is sort of as an information item, but I think the end goal would be to kind of get a sense from you, sense of your comfort level with these, because the goal would then be to take these back to both communities and have them vote on their favorites. And then after that, we would bring them again back to the board for the approval process and take it from there.
Okay, and just quickly, so to have board approval to name the school by October-ish would fit into the time frame that we need, or what are we looking at? October is fine?
Yeah.
Okay,
They would like to make some designs around the name, so. I
okay,
think this- yeah.
okay. Okay, and I think procedurally, so you're mentioning that you would take it out to the community, they would vote and make a selection, and then, but I think formally, the board needs to approve the name, at least the name of the school. I don't know that we approve mascots.
Yeah,
We have before, so I guess we will. Okay. Yeah.
Good idea.
Okay. So, so with that, board, do you have additional questions or suggestions before they take it out to the community? And I assume that the short list is what you're planning to take out to the community.
Correct.
Comments, thoughts?
I was just say, I
We're good to go?
had the opportunity to sort of listen in on this a couple times, and it was really sort of fun to hear as they came around on this. I think the solutions, the suggestions that they've given us are pretty good, other than we'd have to vet out Yeti, or maybe if we think about going with Yeti, we need to make sure it's not copyrighted, or we may have Leon work a deal out with the Yeti Corporation and see if they could sponsor the school for using their name. But I think that the two, Bear Park actually adjoins Edgemont. They're right together. So it makes a lot of sense if it's Bear Park, Big Bear Park, and then Bear Park Elementary. Glacier Hills I don't think we have a Glacier Hills anywhere in the valley. I think it's one of those unusual ones, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the mascots, bees and bears, I don't think they offend anybody.
I want to be a
Dinosaur, I don't
Yeti.
think it offends anybody.
I think that sounds like so much fun. It's a great mascot.
I have to admit that was definitely one of the crowd favorites.
Yeah, they were trying to be very careful that they didn't offend anybody in any of the names, and 10 years later, somebody have to change them.
Steve,
So,
is the name of the park Big Bear Park or is it Bear Park?
Big.
It may be Big Bear,
It
but
is.
everybody just refers to it as Bear Park.
Because
It is
I've always
Big
heard
Bear.
it as Bear Park.
Yeah, I've always heard it just as Bear Park. It may be Big Bear Park, but what
Yeah,
is
but
it?
I
Betty
did look it
Shaw-
up on the county site today, and it is Big Bear
Is
is the
it?
official name, but I think the familiar name is Bear Park.
We've always called it Bear Park. We just take our kids there all the
I
time.
mean, my kids have played soccer there, and it's just a place where, thing I like about Bear Park Elementary is for somebody that's not familiar with that part of town so much, I know where Bear Park is. I think Glacier Hills takes you 5 or 6 miles further east of the mountains where the glaciers were. And this is very specific to the area where the school will be built. My only comment on that is I thought that it was an elementary school, and so I kind of like the name of Cubs.
Cubs.
Little bears,
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the, when we were in our discussion, some of it, a lot like the dinosaurs, because you could really put that into architecture and you could have all kinds of dinosaurs. I guess there's several different types of bees and bears, but you wouldn't notice the difference on the bees. But anyway, so that was some of the discussion is, so it'd be interesting to see what the city, what the people down there would like to have. But I'm okay with either one of them. I don't know about the rest of you.
Okay, so yeah, that would be my question to you as a board. Are we comfortable with this short list and comfortable with moving it forward out to the community? Because now would be our time if we wanted to say anything otherwise.
Yeah, I think you scratch Yeti. Be right, you've got issues.
I would
So,
actually would
do you ha-
mention, we did have
can
a
you
conversation with,
check on that?
our legal counsel here. And the feeling was that as long as the school, we don't present it in all caps, it's not an official part of the name, right? Because that we should be okay. And that also that there are other schools that use Yeti as the mascot, the Cleveland Community College, Akipo Academy in Las Vegas, Reunion Elementary School, I guess, to name a few. So we didn't see any concerns with that any more than we would with, you know, a charger or a hawk or a tiger.
Right. Can I say something?
Yes, Mrs. Oaks.
I don't think that the Yeti Corporation can copyright a mythological character that existed way before they did, right? So I'm just saying, that's my 2 cents. I think this is the coolest mascot ever. So
Nobody has Yetis.
Okay. Okay. Any other commentary? Because, I mean, just realistically, once we take it out to the community, I suspect that we'll want to support the community decision. So we need to be comfortable with all of these. I'll just say it that way.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're good. I think you, and Kirsten, thank you, and Julie, thank you for your work, and please express our appreciation to the community and the folks that have been a part of this. And we are excited for this to be building a new legacy in that area.
I think they're really excited too. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, where are we? It looks like policy. Mr. Jeff Christensen. Oh, boy. Yeah. No, this is great. We love policy, and thank you for bringing these to us, because I understand that these are some things that we've been directed to adjust our policies for, so.
Yeah, thank you, President Teague. Steve Diamond tried to do the policy update earlier, but I'll have a reserved spot later. I think Yeti is fantastic. I think I was a Patriot and a Ute and then a Bulldog, but a Yeti sounds great. I'll try to move through these policy updates. 2 of them are housekeeping issues. This next year with absences and truancies will be very unique. And I know BJ's office has already talked about there'll be quite a bit of flexibility, but beyond that, we just want to update, given HB 14 in this last legislative session, we have some new definitions and made a few minor readability edits to the policy. So our books will be clean. Nothing too substantive here, other than you'll take note that in the past we could allow multiple tardies to count as an absence, and that no longer can occur. All of these policies tonight are for first reading. And so then if the policy committee or board members have feedback, please provide it to the policy committee. The next policy is employee conduct and professionalism. Again, this is really just a housekeeping issue. As we brought you the discipline policy last month, we've had some employee duty reporting elements that have always been part of the discipline policy. And now what we're doing for clarity is moving this language into our employee conduct and professionalism. The duties haven't changed. They're just keeping that language back into our employee conduct and professionalism policy. The board had previously approved the language, and we're just adding it back into this one so that all of those duties remain part of our policy structure. The next one is our school community council policy, and we've added language here for the ability to conduct electronic meetings. In statute, the school community council statute is exempted. Even though they have public meetings, they're exempted from the Open and Public Meetings Act. And in this case, we're adding language so that they can conduct their electronic meetings, and then also keeping in mind that they'll need to adhere to the requirements of a meeting that they typically have, providing notice, keeping minutes, and those other requirements. And then the other provision that we're adding in terms of elections is that currently we don't have a mechanism to conduct electronic elections in our schools. And so, and until we develop that method, we're adding language that those elections would still need to be conducted not through electronic means. Those 3 policies are already on our within our policy manual. And so those are updates. And then the last one, I'll take just a minute or two more with this one. The U.S. Department of Education released new Title IX regulations governing sexual harassment on May 6th, 2020 to take effect August 14th, 2020. The timing of these regulations, given COVID-19, in my mind, is a challenge that difficult for the administrations to also deal with this in addition to everything else that's going on. Nevertheless, we'll be subject to these regulations on August 14th, 2020. We're bringing it to the board now with the intent of having this be adopted at our next meeting. So we'll be pretty close to the August 14th date. And given that we won't have students now till the 24th, we'll be in good shape to have our policy in place and ready for issues of sexual harassment under Title IX. I want to review just the components of the policy. If you reviewed it, board members on board docs, it's lengthy given the new regulations. There is quite a bit in the regulations requiring new due process requirements for addressing sexual harassment. In the slides here tonight, I've just included the new definition. I'd encourage you to go back and take a look at it. What we're going to do in this new policy is have a higher threshold for sexual harassment and then a lower tier threshold for sexual misconduct. And we've trained all of our administrators on this at this point. This new definition will have 3 components, and it also, the new regulations require that we have a designated Title IX coordinator, which will be in our legal services office. So this new policy that you see on the books that's prepared for you to review has these new components of sexual harassment and the new due process requirements. In the policy, you'll see that this is just a summary as you're reviewing it before our second reading at the next board meeting, but it'll include how to report incidents, how a formal complaint will be able to be filed, the procedures for investigation, determination of responsibility by decision makers, appeal, and record keeping. Each one of those sections is governed by the federal regulations, including time periods, who can conduct an investigation, and who also can serve as a decision maker, and the appeal timeline, as well as record keeping. And it's all dictated by federal regulations. As I said, we've met with administrators and given them an introduction to these new requirements, and we'll do ongoing training throughout the school year. I can answer any questions. So all of those are for first reading, and I don't have anything else to present.
Okay.
So.
Board, any questions on these?
Just one real quick.
Mr. Milberg.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the assumption that sexual harassment policy is not only employee to employee, but employee to student as well.
Correct. So what we have had currently in our non-discrimination policy, we've had language that governed both the employee and student. We've had a non-discrimination policy for employees and one for students, and they're essentially verbatim, but in 2 separate sections. That's why you see a 400 and a 500. We'll have the same requirements with this policy. It'll be both applicable to employees and students.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Christensen.
Thank you, members of the board.
Okay, and that brings us to the item USBA Delegate Assembly items. I will turn the time over to Mr. Montmillerberg.
At our last meeting, we were pushed for time as well. And what I am looking for, and I don't care from whom it comes, we need to come up with a list of legislative priorities that we would like to have go before the Delegate Assembly for the USBA. I know one that I'm concerned about that was a hot topic before COVID hit was the possibility of the constitutional amendment and how funding will take place. I don't know what else board members have. Charlie and Susan, I would certainly welcome input from the two of you. And I would like to be able to get the items that are important to Canyon School District to the Legislative Action Committee for USBA, hopefully by the end of this week. And if nobody else
Okay,
is talking, then
ideas?
we're done.
Well, I actually thought this through a little bit, and I think that especially in light of our current situation in the state economically, that I think it would be a good time to just emphasize the importance of WPU. So the resources that come towards public education are funneled to WPU as the first priority. And I say that just because it is a funding mechanism that allows the maximum flexibility for local decision making. And I think we've all we're all more aware of how important it is to have available flexible funds. And I also, we've had a lot of discussions about the connectivity challenges that we have, and superintendent says, as he says, it's not just in our district, which it is, but throughout the state. So, you know, if there could be some way of some public-private partnerships or something that's on the state level.
And if I remember correctly, last Thursday with the governor's press conference, that was an item that was mentioned there.
Yeah, I think there's interest and need.
Traction.
Yeah, there's some interest and need. And then, and I don't even really know how to articulate this, but now that we're all jumping into the online delivery of public education, I think that there's probably quite a few policy and or other pieces of or statute that could be addressed to help support that as we move forward. I don't know. Anyone else have ideas? Charlie, do you have ideas?
I've got an idea. Why don't we adjourn? I actually did just take a few notes, and I think you covered most of them. I think I just made note of what I think the legislature is going to be dealing with. And there's going to be a lot of COVID bills, some of which will affect schools. There's going to be a lot of bills up there governing how health departments, the powers that the health departments and the governor has to regulate things during the pandemic. I think that's something that we're going to definitely need to be involved in. And one thing I wanted to suggest that we haven't discussed, I'm just looking over my list here real quick to make sure we've covered everything I had on the list. But one thing I think that we should recommend or suggest, Mont, is a rule or a bylaw or a guideline or something so that most associations, the way they work up there is if there's a bill that divides the members somehow and pits them one against the other, the association doesn't take a position. And I think the USBA should look at that for bills that create winners and losers among school districts. And when that happens, they should not take a position on that bill. And last, several legislative sessions, we've had to deal with that, and we've been on the losing side of it. And it's just very frustrating to see, not that anybody's done anything wrong. I'm not suggesting anybody's done anything wrong, but it's just frustrating when we pay into that association, just like everybody else. And then to see that money being used in a way that we deem is not beneficial to the students of the Canyon School District.
In a word, equalization.
In a word, equalization. But that's not the only. one either. You know, they've become very adept up there at knowing where to draw the line so that they can get 38 votes in the House and 15 votes in the Senate. And we seem to be always right below that line. And I think that it would be a good idea for USBA to consider a policy like that. And then if the districts are pitted against themselves, then it's each district's responsibility to communicate with their legislative delegation and to represent their own interest, and for the USBA to kind of stay out of it is what I'm proposing. And there's not going to be very many bills like that a year, but they seem to always be pretty big bills.
There's always something.
Yes. And that's all I have.
And they always hurt.
They seem to always hurt us. And that's all I had.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and I will kind of second that suggestion, that support, because I've had firsthand experience when we've been dealing with some of those bills, and it's really difficult when the association feels an obligation to take a position, and it really does divide the groups. So
I'm familiar.
So I think it's really in the, not only would it benefit Canyons District on occasion, but I think it would benefit the association.
Yeah,
I
I
think it would
totally agree.
take a lot of the animosity out of it. And I'm familiar with how most of these associations work up there, and we're the only one that doesn't do something like this that I'm aware of.
Well, and the question I have is, I think that if you've got an issue where the districts in the state are divided on, that makes total sense. But I'm afraid you may come up with something to where you have 40 school districts that would be in favor of it and one or two.
Well, I'm not talking about just simply things that people may have different policy positions on. I'm talking about where they're taking money from us and giving it to somebody else.
Okay.
But I'm just throwing this out as a suggestion, obviously. I mean, you guys would have to work the details out, and I'd be happy to be involved in that if I could be helpful.
So, so it might even be that where there's disparate benefit and cost,
If you
right?
could get some wording, I think that would be helpful, Charlie. If you could.
I'll ask some associations and see what they have.
Okay, and then also I wanted to add, I think we should ask for no year-end testing. And I mean, we already have no school grading, but I think there should be no statewide tests this year. That's an idea. I don't know how you guys feel.
I have a feeling that there will be bills up there doing that. But that is probably a good idea.
Just for this year.
Well, yeah, to suspend it for this year, but some of that could be federal. I mean, we might need the suspension on the federal and as they, their requirements for
We'll probably have
state
a new
accountability.
administration by the time the legislature meets again. So we can
Yeah.
worry about that then, I would guess.
Yeah. Any other suggestions? Anyone? No? Does that help?
That helps a lot.
When I was growing up, I thought it would be cool to have to wear one of these for work. How much you
Yeah, my question though, Charlie, when you wanted to wear that for work, was that to rob banks?
Rob banks, yes.
Or were you still have the vision of a horse and a train? You were going to hold up the train.
Yeah, robbing banks from the back of a horse. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Thank you for that. So next up is adjourn. And I noticed we didn't really put board member comments on here because the plan was to adjourn this meeting and then reconvene as a roundtable meeting. But it has been suggested to me by multiple board members that we should probably not go ahead and move forward with that discussion at this time. However, I think that I'm just trying to think procedurally. I think I will adjourn this meeting and then open the next meeting, table the item, and then adjourn the meeting. Okay? Everybody good with that? Okay. All right. So this meeting is now adjourned, and in doing so, I just want to thank again everyone. It's incredible, not only that you stayed here, but the amount of work that is happening. And I probably not exaggerating too much if I say 24/7 for many of you. So we appreciate that very much. This meeting is adjourned. And so with that, we will now convene the meeting of the Canyons Board of Education, August 4th, for a study session roundtable item. And it has been suggested or that we,
I'll make a motion.
yeah. So the item is roundtable discussion.
I move that we suspend that to a later date to be determined.
Okay, thank you. And is there a second to that motion?
Can I just make a comment?
Well, you,
Or do
if
we
you
have
want to
to
second
second?
it, then
I'll
I'll ask for
second it.
discussion to the motion.
I'll second it, and then if I can add it, just a little discussion.
Okay, is there discussion to the motion?
Yes.
Mrs. Oaks.
Okay, sorry about that. It's late. So I really do care a great deal about the roundtable discussion items, but in light of everything that you guys are doing, I think it's only fair that we pause it and give it its own due time and course. And so there's no way to really adequately express our thanks, but thank you. I recognize you don't get a lot of thanks for what you're doing. And the barrage is incessant. And I know, Superintendent Robbins, I know we had this discussion earlier this week, but for you to come in as a new superintendent during this event is pretty significant. And I would venture to say, I can't imagine anything else that's going to throw you more than this. So if you make it through this, okay, you're in smooth sailing afterwards, I would think. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion to the motion? I will just ask the board then, are you okay if I work with Dr. Robbins and we start kind of looking forward a month or two and just see when we would be able to at least have a moment to visit these topics? Is that okay?
I think it would be great. I think we just need to put it off and do the COVID thing, get the school open, figured it out, and then come back to it. I don't care if we do it until January to just make sure we get through between now and December.
Till our next crisis.
Okay, thank you. And I will say that it is a vital part of the board's work that we do. And we have kind of established this annual tradition for that. But like many things, annual traditional things and other practices are being put on hold. So we will do that and get back to you. And I want to thank the board. Thank you all very much for your study and the work that you do and the very thoughtful questions. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. We have a motion and a second. Thank you. All right, let's vote on the motion and then I'll thank everybody again. Okay, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you. And yeah, just a thank you to board, to everyone here. And good luck, best wishes, and we'll see everyone on the 18th, if not before.
I feel like a Yeti.